This man, Mao Zedong, brought a country of 540 million peasant people into the modern world. He did it after half a century of war and civil war. He used a mixture of nationalism and communism to bind the people together. He led the Chinese Communist Party for 42 years. Mao was 7 years old when the 20th century began. His father was a peasant who owned land round this farm. Because Mao was clever, his father wanted him to keep the farm accounts. But Mao had other ideas. The peasant boy from the provinces watched as the rule of the Empress Dowager in Peking gave way to chaos. In 1912, the Kuomintang was formed, a people's party under Sun Yat-sen. Mao Zedong, at first a student, then a teacher, then a librarian, read widely in history and politics. He began to see how badly managed China was. Most of her ports and industries were controlled by foreign powers. Shanghai, under the British and the French, was China's greatest port. It was here that Mao's revolution began. In 1921, oddly enough, in a girls' school, the founders of the Chinese Communist Party met for the first time. Mao was among them. They agreed to join forces with the Kuomintang. Many parts of the country were dominated by local warlords. The Kuomintang army, now backed by communists, marched against them. Mao later went to the province of Jiangxi to organize a peasant army. There in Jiangxi, he was confirmed in his belief that the Chinese peasant was the real key to revolution in China. By 1927, the Kuomintang campaign against the warlords was well underway. But jealousy of the communists within the Kuomintang led to a purge, and this spelt disaster for the communists. In a kind of night of the long knives in Shanghai, communist leaders were killed. Luckily, Mao was out of Shanghai. Some communists escaped to their few remaining strongholds, like Jiangxi.
May I introduce to the audience the President of the National Government.
The new leader of the Kuomintang was Chiang Kai-shek.
Long live the Three People's Principle. Long live the revolutionary spirit of the nationalist China.
Chiang hated communism. He ordered his troops to surround the communist bases in Jiangxi. They slowly tightened the noose in a series of extermination campaigns. By 1934, Mao knew that his Red Army must either fight its way out or die. So 100,000 set out on the legendary Long March, a trek of 6,000 miles that took them a year. Kuomintang forces harassed the marchers. During the Long March, at a town called Sunyi, Mao was elected chairman of the Chinese Communist Party. Then, to avoid the Kuomintang, the communist armies split up. Mao led one army himself. Though there was discord, the marchers eventually reached communist-held territory in the northwest. Only 30,000 survived. They set up their base around the little town of Yan'an. They lived in caves carved in the hillside. A young American journalist, Edgar Snow, managed to reach Mao in Yan'an.
When he began to talk to me about his plans for the future of China and the revolution, at first it sounded fantastic because he had only this tiny little area and small band with him, but the way in which he presented his program and his ideas was so logical and so convincing that he, in the end, had me believing that he was truly an exceptional person.
Edgar Snow also filmed Mao's army. It was a time of planning and preparing. Their soldiers were trained to spread a political message, that the peasants didn't have to starve and be exploited, that China could be run in a reasonable way. The peasants had never known soldiers to behave like this before. They had to help the people, pay for everything they needed, leave everything clean, respect women, never damage crops. In 1937, Japan began all-out war on China. Now Chiang Kai-shek and the communists were faced with a common enemy. The communists called for a united front of all Chinese to fight Japan. The Americans and British who supported the Kuomintang called on Chiang Kai-shek to accept the surrender of the Japanese in 1945. The Americans made some attempt to bring the communists into a coalition Chinese government. But it all came to nothing. Civil war followed. The Kuomintang at first had enormous superiority in numbers and modern weapons, but their forces were ill-trained and badly paid. By the summer of 1948, the Kuomintang army was losing ground. Mao chose Lin Piao as his military commander to plan the final struggle. A few months more, and the Kuomintang was in full retreat. The remnant took refuge on the island of Taiwan, where the Americans continued to support them. Mao Zedong was approaching the moment for which he'd planned and fought for more than 20 years. On the 1st of October 1949, Mao stood with his colleagues on the Gate of Heavenly Peace in Peking and proclaimed the new People's Republic of China.